Most people don't ruin their retirement by saving too little. They ruin it by saving too hard for too long without knowing when the job is already done. That sounds backwards, I know, but stay with me, because if you understand what I'm about to show you, it can literally give you years of your life back. There is a moment in every investing journey that almost nobody explains clearly. Not your first $10,000, not your first $100,000, not even when you finally feel comfortable. It's the moment when your retirement stops depending on how perfect you are going forward. The moment when missing a contribution doesn't feel like a disaster. The moment when your future doesn't collapse just because life gets messy. The moment when your money quietly starts doing more work than you do. Most people never realize this moment exists, and because of that, they keep grinding long after the math says they don't have to. And that mistake is expensive, not just financially, but emotionally, physically, relationally, because people who don't understand this moment keep postponing life. They delay career changes, they delay rest, they delay freedom, they delay joy, all because they think, I can't slow down yet. Today, I'm going to show you the exact point where that belief breaks. Not with hype, not with theory, with simple math and a shift in how you see your portfolio. And somewhere in this video, you're going to realize one of two things. Either you are much earlier than you thought, and that's okay. Or you are much closer than you've been told, and that changes everything. But first, we need to expose the lie most people are unknowingly living under. The lie is this, that retirement is one long grind until 65, and every single year has to go perfectly. That belief keeps people anxious for decades, and it's not even true. Here's the reality nobody explains. There are two engines driving your entire investing journey. Only one of them lasts forever. The first engine is loud, painful, very visible. Your contributions. This is the money you manually add from your paycheck, the money you notice, the money you feel. Early on, this engine is everything. Without it, nothing moves. You feel like you're pushing a heavy boulder uphill. Every dollar matters. Every missed contribution feels dangerous. And because this phase lasts years, people assume this is how investing always works. But it's not. There's a second engine working quietly in the background. Compounding. In the beginning, it's almost insulting. A few $100s a year, maybe a couple thousand in a good market. Not enough to change how you feel. Not enough to feel real. So people ignore it. But these two engines do not grow at the same speed. One fades, the other accelerates, and at some point, the math flips. That flip is what almost no one is taught to look for. It's called the crossover point, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The crossover point is not emotional, it's not motivational, it's purely mathematical. It is the exact moment when your portfolio's annual growth becomes larger than the amount you contribute each year. That's it. That's the moment when you stop pulling your portfolio forward and your portfolio starts pulling itself. Let's make this concrete because clarity is calming. Assume you're investing $20,000 per year into broad index funds. We'll assume a long-run average return of 7% just to keep the math simple. Early on, your contribution dominates everything. At $100,000 invested, a 7% return is $7,000. You're adding $20,000. You are the engine. Compounding is barely helping. At $300,000 invested, 7% growth is $21,000. Now pause there. That's the first interesting moment. Your portfolio is now doing roughly as much work as you are. You and compounding are sharing the load. This is where most people still feel behind, even though the math is starting to shift in their favor. Now let's move forward. At $500,000 invested, a 7% return is $35,000. Read that again. Your portfolio is now growing more in a year than most people can save. Your $20,000 contribution still matters, but psychologically it starts to shrink. Compounding is no longer the sidekick, it's the main character. And then there's the moment people talk about in whispers. At $1 million invested, 7% growth is $70,000 per year. At that point, your contribution isn't useless, but compared to what the portfolio is doing on its own, it feels like a rounding error. This is why people say it gets easier after the first few $100,000, not because people suddenly become disciplined, but because the physics changed. Early on, you're pushing a boulder uphill. Somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000, depending on how much you save, the boulder starts rolling on its own. Now here's where most advice stops. And this is where the real damage begins. Because knowing that compounding eventually takes over is not enough. The real question people are afraid to ask is this: what happens if I stop contributing at different points? Not because they want to be lazy, but because life happens. Job loss, burnout, caregiving, health issues, a chance to do something meaningful. So let's run the thought experiment most people never see. Same assumptions, $20,000 per year, 7% average growth, targeting $1 million. If you contribute consistently the entire way, you reach $1 million in roughly 23 years. That's the baseline. Now, watch how sensitive or not the timeline actually is. If you stop contributing at $100,000, it might take you about 5 years to get there. But stopping that early is brutal. Why? Because you haven't reached critical mass. Your contributions are still doing almost all the work. Stopping here can cost you decades. This is why early consistency matters so much. Now, let's move the stopping point. Stop contributing at $300,000. Maybe that takes around 11 years of saving. From there, compounding has enough mass to carry you the rest of the way in about 18 more years. Total timeline, roughly 29 years. Compared to the baseline, you only lost about 6 years. That surprises people. But now comes the moment that really messes with your intuition. Stop contributing at $500,000. Maybe that takes around 15 years. From there, compounding can double that money to $1 million in roughly 11 more years. Total timeline, about 26 years. That means stopping at $500,000 only delays your $1 million milestone by about 3 years. Read that slowly. Halfway to $1 million is not halfway in time. And this is the single most misunderstood idea in personal finance. Once you reach critical mass, time and compounding start doing so much work that your ongoing contributions matter less in relative terms. Now, before someone panics, let me be very clear. Contributions matter less does not mean contributions don't matter. This is where nuance saves people from making stupid decisions. The crossover point is a psychological shift, the moment when you no longer need to contribute for retirement to still work on schedule is a different concept entirely. That moment has a name. It's called Coast-Fi. And this is where people either feel profound relief or intense regret depending on when they learn about it. Coast-Fi means this: you have enough invested today that even if you never add another dollar, compounding should still grow it into your retirement goal by your target age. Not because markets are guaranteed, but because time is finally doing the heavy lifting. This does not mean early retirement. It usually means freedom from pressure, freedom to work fewer hours, freedom to change careers, freedom to say no, freedom to stop feeling like one bad year will destroy everything. Now let's walk through the math slowly because most people have never actually seen this written out. First, decide how much you want to spend in retirement. Let's say $70,000 per year. Next, subtract income you expect without selling investments. For example, Social Security. Let's estimate $25,000 per year. That means your portfolio needs to generate $45,000 per year. Using a common 4% withdrawal framework, that implies a target portfolio of $45,000 divided by 0.04 equals $1,125,000. That's the finish line. Now, here's the part almost no one shows. To find your COASTFI number, you work backwards. You take the target portfolio and divide it by compound growth over time. In plain English, target portfolio divided by 1 plus real return raised to the nth power, where real return is your expected return after inflation, and n is the number of years until retirement. So in this example, assume 5% real return, 30 years until retirement. $1,125,000 divided by 1.05 to the 30th power. That comes out to roughly $260,000. Let that sink in. If you are about 30 years from retirement and you have around $260,000 invested, you do not need to add another dollar for retirement to still work on schedule. Not because you should stop investing, but because the pressure is gone. And this is where the emotional damage of not knowing this shows up. People cross this line and never realize it. They keep behaving like every contribution is life or death. They stay in jobs they hate. They avoid opportunities they want. They live with constant financial tension. Not because the math demands it, but because nobody told them the machine was already built. Before COASTFI, missing contributions feels dangerous. After COASTFI, your job becomes simple. Don't screw it up. Stay invested. Don't panic sell. Don't raid the account. Don't let lifestyle inflation quietly steal the freedom you just earned. And yes, contributions still matter, but now they matter for risk reduction, not survival. They buy margin, they buy safety, they buy options. Here's the tragedy. Most people only track one milestone: retire someday. That's a recipe for burnout. The healthier approach is to track the shifts that prove the system is working. The first $10,000, proof the habit exists. The first $100,000, compounding starts to feel real. The crossover point, growth beats contributions. The first year your portfolio earns more than you do. It feels surreal, but it happens. Your COASTFI number, contributions become optional. When investments cover essentials, the first real taste of security. When work becomes optional, the end game. Your investing journey is not one long grind to 65. It is a series of transitions. Early on, you are the engine. Then compounding becomes your co-pilot. Then compounding becomes the driver. And eventually, if you stay in the game long enough, you reach that strange moment where your effort no longer feels like the main thing. Your money is finally pulling its own weight. So wherever you are right now, starting from zero, chasing $10,000, climbing toward $100,000, pushing toward that $300,000 to $500,000 crossover range, remember this: you are not just saving, you are building a machine. And once the machine is big enough, it does not need you pushing forever. It just needs you to not get in the way. If this brought clarity to how you see your own progress, hit like and subscribe. It helps more people find calm, realistic financial guidance. And tell me in the comments, which milestone are you chasing right now? $10,000, $100,000, or the crossover point?